16 light snow fell over Joshan. I borrowed a long-handled umbrella from the hotel and walked toward Puji Temple. Even with the wind and snow, the temple was crowded with worshippers, said to be extremely efficacious. As I was about to keep going, a familiar figure caught my eye. Orion Pei wore a black jacket, snowflakes dusting his black hair. His hands clasped together in prayer, he knelt and kowtowed 3 times, then stood and repeated the ritual, all the way toward the temple gate. Onlookers murmured in awe. Hasn't he done this back and forth 9 times already? That young man has incredible stamina. It's the 10th time, a nearby vendor chimed in. He was here when I set up my stall at 4 in the morning. My fingers tightened around the umbrella handle, a heavy weight settling in my chest. At the temple gate, the abbot came out to greet Orion. He bowed respectfully before following the abbot slowly inside. I instinctively trailed behind them, hiding half my face behind the umbrella. They entered the Xidigarbha hall and I froze. Orion Pei was infamously irreligious. The Qin and Pei families occasionally visited temples together, but Orion had never joined them. Once, during the Pei family's ancestral worship ceremony when everyone prayed for blessings, Orion had even casually taken an offering and said to his mother in front of everyone, "Instead of praying to gods for peace of mind, you'd be better off doing fewer dirty deeds to avoid falling into the 18th level of hell after death." His mother had fainted on the spot. His father had flogged him dozens of times as punishment. Orion had remained unrepentant. He'd always believed gods couldn't save the world. Yet here he was, repaying a vow with such devotion. After offering incense piously, the abbot sighed softly. Benefactor Pei shares a karmic connection with Puji Temple. This old monk must remind you karma is a cycle. For every gain there is loss. With your current health you won't last 3 months. Trading one life for another, are you certain it's worth it? My pupils contracted in disbelief. My heart raced wildly. Just as I raised my hand to push open the door, Orion let out a soft laugh, his tone unshakably firm. It's worth it. I failed to protect her once. Fortunately, the Buddha is merciful, he gave me a second chance. Now that Lila and I are engaged, I've already gained more than I deserve. I don't ask to be on the same household registration as her. I only ask that she lives the rest of her life in peace and prosperity. With that, he clasped his hands together and bowed to the abbot again. Thank you, abbot. Whether in my past life or this one. The abbot shook his head. Orion turned to leave the hall. I quickly ducked aside, avoiding his gaze. He pulled out his phone, his lips curving slightly as he stared down at the screen. His fingers tapped twice and the next second, my palm vibrated with a message from him. You peach blossom pastries, Joshan specialty. When I looked up again, Orion was gone, vanished into the crowd of worshippers. I didn't know what Orion had done for me after I died in my past life, but I was certain my rebirth was inseparable from him. But how could someone be willing to trade their life for another's? I called Shin-in, asking her to check if Orion had visited any hospitals recently. Her reply came quickly, he had 3 days ago. When I saw the diagnosis on the medical report, my heart twisted sharply with pain. Congestive heart failure. Recommendation, heart transplant. Shin-in sent more messages, but I took a deep breath and called my father. He answered immediately, Dad, help me continue searching for the source of the contamination. There was a pause on the other end, followed by anxious concern. Lila, you told me your illness was cured. It's Orion Pei. My father fell silent. The line went completely quiet. After 2 minutes he spoke again. No wonder. Orion came to see me yesterday morning. He's secretly bought up scattered shares of the Pei group. It's not enough to directly confront the Pei patriarch yet, but it's only a matter of time. He wants to transfer all the shares to you. 17 Orion had paved the way for me, the Pei group, all his personal assets, and even a trillion-yuan listed company he'd secretly founded overseas behind the Pei family's back. As I stared at the pile of documents my father sent me, I couldn't help but laugh. This was everything Orion had. Shin-in had also uncovered something about Orion. The fight that got him suspended from school years ago wasn't his fault. Those thugs had tried to drug and assault me. Orion had found them and fought them off to protect me. He'd refused to tell me about the filthy incident, choosing to take the blame alone. And the recent fight at the bar? That was for me too. They'd planned to replace my heart medication with vitamin C to get back at me. But they didn't know, Orion had been keeping an eye on them ever since the first attempted incident. They were all hired by Mabel Jiang because of Asher Pei. In my past life I thought I had no real connection to Orion. But in reality he'd been shielding me from all the storms behind the scenes time and time again. And he'd never once asked for credit. Foolishly, pitifully loyal. By then I'd returned to the hotel. I turned off my phone, but Orion came back soon after. He held an exquisite pastry box, his lips curving into a faint smile as he looked at me, though his face was pale. There was a bit of traffic, so I'm late. Here, Joshan's specialty. Want to try one? Orion opened the peach blossom pastries and held one up to my mouth as if courting me. I leaned away. His hand froze, confusion flickering in his eyes. I parted my lips, my voice calm but firm. Orion Pei, you like me? Orion seemed puzzled, asking softly, have I not made it obvious enough, Lila? Is it because I saved you in your 3rd year of high school? Some answers were always within reach, like why Orion had suddenly changed his personality, why he'd changed his name. Once, I'd thought he'd wanted a fresh start. Now I realized I'd barely scratched the surface. Orion didn't lie this time. He set down the pastries, knelt on one knee before me, his gaze devout. Yes. Because you saved me. Lila, I live for you. He took my hand and pressed a gentle kiss to the back of it. It was our first intimate contact since getting engaged, his first kiss to me. No impure thoughts, no ambiguity. He treated me like his god, his only reason for living. In my past life and in this one. That's why he'd been willing to trade his life for mine, his death for my survival. Orion's love was far more sincere than Asher's. My heart ached for him and I regretted not noticing his oddities sooner. After a long moment I reached out and cupped his face in my hands. Orion Pei, I want to know everything. He froze. I asked again, did you not bring me back to life, Orion Pei? By then Orion had no way out. He didn't know how much I'd learned or how I'd found out. All he knew was if he didn't tell me the whole truth I'd be angry, disappointed, hurt. He couldn't bear to see me unhappy for even a moment. So he had no choice but to tell me everything. 18 in my past life, when Orion Pei learned I'd died of a heart attack, he'd been attending a meeting overseas. He rushed back to Beijing overnight, unable to believe it. He'd explicitly told his men to secretly protect me, yet I'd still met with misfortune. When he arrived at the hospital, Asher Pei was holding my body, chasing away anyone who tried to enter the ward. Even when my father rushed over, Asher had his bodyguards restrain him, barring him from getting anywhere near. The corridor echoed with my father's heart-wrenching sobs. Orion suppressed his rage to comfort my father, then single-handedly took down 10 bodyguards and kicked open the ward door. Asher glared at him, screaming for him to get out. Orion ignored him, grabbing Asher by the collar and throwing punch after punch at his face, his stomach, unleashing all his overwhelming hatred. He roared at Asher, you took Lila to a bungee jumping platform? Have you lost your mind? Don't you know she has a heart condition? Bungee jumping? Even the slightest shock could kill her. Asher was beaten senseless, his eyes red from crying, tears mixing with blood. He curled up on the floor, his voice choked. I arranged for an ambulance. A medical team was on standby the whole time. I thought Lila would pull through like she always did. I never thought she'd die. Every word felt like a knife piercing Orion's heart. Orion wanted to kill Asher right then and there. Asher had thought he'd planned everything perfectly, but he'd never known I'd already lost the will to live. Not to mention Mabel Jiang had sabotaged the rescue, delaying it intentionally. The entire game had been a plot by Mabel and Asher's archenemy. With their 3-year agreement coming to an end, Asher had asked for a divorce. Mabel had wanted me dead and Asher's rival had just wanted to watch the drama unfold as an outsider. Orion took my body away. He pressed charges of manslaughter against Asher and the others, pulling strings to ensure they were sentenced to death. The Pei family's influence had long been in decline. Coupled with my father's relentless suppression and media campaign against them after my death, Pei Group's stock plummeted. Mrs. Pei had begged Orion to spare Asher, pleading for brotherly mercy. Orion refused. Mrs. Pei had screamed at him, hysterical, killing your own brother over a woman. If I'd known this would happen, I never would have given birth to you. Orion, sending your brother to prison to die, you cold-blooded monster. May you rot in hell. Distant relatives of the Pei family had also pleaded with Orion to show leniency. But Orion remained unyielding. He struck his name from the family tree, severing all ties with the Pei clan. He'd avenged me, but in the end he'd lost everyone, abandoned by family and friends alike. Before Asher's execution, he'd begged Orion to let him see me one last time. He'd told Orion he was sorry if he'd known I'd die, he never would have let me step onto that bungee platform. He said he deserved to die for his sins, but he just wanted to see me once more. Orion had refused. In the end, Asher died filled with regret. Later, Orion went to Joshan alone. It had been snowing heavily. He'd knelt and kowtowed all the way to Puji Temple, praying for my next life to be smooth, free of suffering. He'd made a vow before the gods, if I can trade my life for Lila's rebirth, I will. He never thought his prayer would be answered, until he opened his eyes and saw me standing at the alley entrance. I couldn't believe it, he said. For once, fate had favored me. Lila, I am so lucky. Having finished his story, Orion lifted his eyes to me. No longer hiding the blazing love and devotion in his gaze, it was as if I was the only person in the world. After 2 lifetimes of silent guardianship, his love had finally seen the light of day. Even though I'd guessed parts of it, my heart was filled with an indescribable ache. I'd never known Orion had sacrificed everything, his family, his name, for me in my past life. His love was too profound, all because I'd reached out my hand to him that day. He'd walked alone for so long. But this time, fortunately, we were finally walking together. 19 Meanwhile, in Beijing, Asher Pei was swamped with work. Though only a junior in college, he'd been handling parts of the Pei Group's operations since his freshman year. He was highly capable and most of his subordinates respected him. Even the seasoned veterans in the company could barely outmaneuver him. He was a master at exploiting people's weaknesses, striking decisively when he found them. But this had also earned him many enemies. Before his engagement party with Mabel Jiang, he'd already started injecting capital into the Jiang Group. The move immediately angered the board of directors. The Jiang Group was on the verge of bankruptcy, requiring massive investment with no short-term returns. The risks were too high, which was why Asher had been forced to agree to the engagement with Mabel in the first place. He'd thought that with Mabel's status as the future Pei daughter-in-law, the directors would have to hold their tongues. But this time, events had taken an unexpected turn. Mr. Pei remained neutral, wanting to see how Asher would balance the situation. No one had anticipated that at today's board meeting, Orion Pei's shareholding would actually surpass Asher's. No one knew how he'd pulled it off. Asher had already been furious about Orion and Lila's engagement. Now he was livid enough to want to kill Orion. Yet somehow he couldn't find any trace of Orion or Lila's whereabouts. He knew Lila's father was helping them. After the engagement party, he'd gone to the Chin mansion, politely asking to see Lila. Mr. Chin had had him thrown out immediately. Desperate, Asher had taken off his suit jacket and tried to climb through Lila's window, just like he used to. But the window was sealed shut. The secret path Lila had once kept open for him, their little secret, was gone. In that moment, Asher felt a pang of confusion. But he also knew something between him and Lila had irrevocably changed. Still, he clung to the belief that Lila was just angry. That she still loved him. Her engagement to Orion was just a show. They'd barely spoken to each other before. How could they suddenly be inseparable? Yet he couldn't stop himself from worrying. What if something really happened between Lila and Orion, alone together so far from home? The more he thought about it, the more regretful he became. He drank heavily, trying to numb his thoughts, only to end up sleeping with Mabel Jiang that night. He remembered every detail, how he'd torn off Mabel's clothes. How she'd clung to him, begging for more again and again. When he woke up the next morning, he stared at Mabel sleeping beside him, covered in hickeys. His heart skipped a beat. Too ashamed to wake her, he grabbed his clothes and fled to the underground garage. The engagement to Mabel had been a last resort. He'd never intended to cross the line. At least not before the wedding. He sat in the driver's seat, head throbbing, smoking one cigarette after another. Once he'd calmed down, he took out his phone to text Lila. Plagued by guilt, he promised her he would never cross the line with Mabel Jiang. But the next second, Lila sent him a screenshot that shattered his lies, pinning him in place. When he trembled as he tried to text back, he found he'd been blocked. 20 Asher Pei almost immediately returned to his bedroom, and at that moment Mabel Jiang had already woken up. When she saw Asher Pei, there was still yesterday's shyness on her face. But the words hadn't been said yet. Asher Pei abruptly raised his hand and slapped Mabel Jiang hard across the face. The force was so great that Mabel Jiang stumbled, lost her balance and fell heavily to the ground. She subconsciously covered her burning face. Asher. What did you send to Lila Chin? Asher Pei's voice was cold and sharp. Mabel Jiang instantly understood, but she hadn't expected Lila Chin would tell Asher Pei. She pursed her lips, her eyes slightly red. Asher, we're engaged. What are you thinking? Claiming sovereignty. Asher Pei interrupted, looking down at her with disdain, anger boiling in his eyes. Mabel Jiang, don't forget we're just collaborators. I'm helping you to repay the favor of saving my life back then. If I find out again that you're sending messages to Lila Chin, forget repaying the favor, I'll take your life directly. If there was a warning left, Asher Pei left. But after that time he also completely lost contact with Lila Chin. Asher Pei put down his phone, his expression darkened another 2 points right after talking to the father of Mabel Jiang. Now the board of directors at the Pei family isn't Asher Pei's one-man show. The investment process is stuck in the voting stage. If Orion Pei doesn't appear soon, then this matter will be dropped. Then it seemed particularly superfluous for him to risk losing Lila Chen and get engaged to Mabel Jiang. Suddenly, Asher Pei felt extremely regretful for agreeing to Mabel Jiang's 3-year promise. Whether the Jiang family goes bankrupt or not, what does it have to do with him? Given the Pei family's influence in Kyoto, can't he even protect Mabel Jiang? The restlessness of many days reached its peak at this moment, as the fire blocking my chest was about to flare up. The butler knocked on the study door, then said, "Master Asher, Miss Chen has returned." Hearing this, the ice on Asher's face finally thawed by a fraction. He hurriedly went to find Lila Chen, only to remember on the butler's reminder that it was Lila Chen's father's birthday today. The Chen family is discreet in their affairs, and even on such a significant day, they would not hold a grand celebration. However, anyone who could be seated at the table was someone who could hold weight in both the political and business circles. This directly raised the threshold for the birthday banquet. Without an invitation, entry was impossible. In previous years, Lila Chen would always proactively come over to deliver the invitations. Now Asher Pei, dressed in a suit, was blocked at the entrance of the Chen family's old mansion. The bodyguard politely said, "Sorry, Shai Pei, without an invitation you can't come in." For a moment, Asher Pei couldn't help but resent his mother. If not for Madame Pei's Shanthayiman of Lila Chen and Orion Pei's engagement, he would never have reached this point today. He would have rearranged everything properly. Even with millions of lies to cover it up, it wouldn't be as difficult as it is today for him to see Lila Chen even once. When Asher Pei was completely at his wit's end, it was probably even the heavens that were helping him. Just as he turned to leave, Lila Chen walked along holding Orion Pei's arm, talking and laughing. But when she saw him, Lila Chen's smile quickly vanished, replaced by an expression of cold detachment. His heart gave a sharp pang and his feet seemed rooted to the ground. The words he had carefully thought out in his study these past days about the physical intimacy with Mabel Jiang, how could he possibly articulate any of it now? As Lila Chen prepared to step over him, Asher quickly grabbed her arm and said directly, "Lila, there's a misunderstanding between us. Let's talk." 21. His tone was somewhat urgent. "I know Asher has been looking for me these days. He has been texting me and calling me using different phone numbers, always trying to explain that his relationship with Mabel Jiang is clean and innocent. It was an accident that day, they didn't follow through to the last step. He said he mistook Mabel Jiang for me and out of fear that I would be angry he lied. But how things actually went, whether they did or not, only Asher Pei and Mabel Jiang know. He silenced Mabel Jiang's mouth, but couldn't stand her playing nice while being sneaky, and went to great lengths to make me aware of all the details of them sleeping together. From initially bragging to later hysterically cursing me as a vengeful spirit who meddles in others' relationships. A bitch. I only feel ironic. It's no different from the previous life. Occupying someone else's things for too long has made her forget that her current position was taken from me. In the end, I was annoyed and simply cancelled the number. The new number is now only known to those who are relatively close to her." Orion Pei's gaze fell on Asher Pei's hand holding my arm, a hint of ferocity showing in his eyes. "Bro, it's not good to casually touch my fiancé in front of me?" Asher Pei heard the word fiancé. His eyes instantly sharpened, suppressing a full flood of anger as he stared at the reckless Orion Pei before him. "Your fiancé? Orion Pei, I don't even know where you got the nerve to develop inappropriate feelings for Lila. I haven't settled the score with you for secretly collecting dispersed shares yet, and you have the audacity to talk about Lila with me?" The last few words were bitten down heavily, laced with a chillingly fierce intent. Orion Pei sneered coldly, gripping Asher Pei's wrist, the force so great that it made the other frown tightly. Asher Pei refused to let go, their gazes colliding in the air. Tension was palpable, ready to erupt at any moment. Just as Asher Pei was about to act, Orion Pei struck first, punching him in the abdomen. He staggered back 2 steps, his back hitting the stone pillar hard. By the time he steadied himself, Orion Pei Weiwei raised his eyebrows, his lips already curling into a casual arc. "Bro, as your younger brother, I sincerely remind you that the one who shouldn't have any feelings for Lila right now is you." After that, he took my hand and interlocked our fingers. Throughout the entire time I didn't say a word. If it were in the past, Asher Pei wouldn't even need to be hit. I would have my eyes welling up from just a cough, because I liked him so much that I couldn't bear for him to suffer even a little harm or injustice. Not even a single ripple stirred in my heart today. Asher Pei still seemed unwilling to believe I would ignore him. He stood his ground, looking at me with somewhat injured eyes. I remained silent, but I never expected Asher Pei to actually say something like asking me to be his lover. Seeing that I was about to leave, his eyes turned slightly red, his gaze fixed on me, his voice hoarse. "Lila, I know you got engaged to Orion Pei just to spite me. How could you be angry with me? How could you hit and curse me? I can accept it all, but you know perfectly well that Mabel Jiang and I are just collaborators. Why can't you consider my feelings a bit? Why must you always take Orion Pei's side against me? I'm so tired these days, can't find you, I'm tired, dealing with those old foxes, I'm tired. Can you stop fighting with me? I bought a villa in the suburbs, shall we move in together? You said before that you loved me, that as long as you could be with me, you didn't care about anything else. At that moment I looked up at Asher's eyes, which held a hint of confusion. So you want me to be your secret lover? 22 Asher Pei answered softly, it's just temporary, Lila. Orion Pei slightly loosened his grip on my hand, he lowered his gaze to look at me, but pressed his lips together without speaking. Only the beloved has the right to choose, while the humble lover can only wait for judgment. Even though during my time in Joshan, I told Orion Pei countless times, I don't like Asher Pei anymore. He still hesitated. Lila, I love you. Don't fight me, okay? I've really been upset these past few days. Asher's jawline was tensed extremely tightly, as if he were suppressing some overwhelming emotion. And I only felt scorn. Asher Pei is like this, seemingly at the end of his rope, yet still unwilling to lower his pride, still unable to let go of what he calls the life-saving grace, still wanting to give it one more try, to try and win my undying heart. But on what basis? In my previous life I loved Asher Pei, so I accepted it. But this life is different. Asher Pei will wrong me, but Orion Pei won't, my father won't, Shanine won't. The love they give me is 1,000 and 10,000 times greater than what Asher Pei gives. After a long while I opened my thin lips and said in a tone, Asher Pei, I am the only daughter of the Qin family and the sole heir to the Qin family. I'm the little princess of my father, the object of many's envy. Why would I have to be a secret lover? Because I love you, so I have to endure all the grievances, right? No, it's not. Asher Pei was eager to explain. I no longer paid attention to him, but instead I took Orion Pei's hand and entered the old mansion. Asher Pei still wanted to chase after us, but he was stopped by the bodyguards. In the end he could only watch us disappear from his sight. Inside the hall, Orion Pei kept his lips pressed together and remained silent. I felt a bit helpless, so I finally reached out and patted his head. Orion Pei, do you think I still like Asher Pei? Do you think I'd abandon you because of a few casual words he said? Orion's eyes showed a complex mix of emotions. You've liked Asher for many years. Yes, even throwing away reputation in life, I said. Orion's expression darkened further, and an aura of chilling unease enveloped him. Until I said again, but that's in the past. It's you who is engaged to me now. It's you who has the right to stand by my side. It's you who will be my partner on my marriage certificate in the future. What are you afraid of? My youthful arrogance and spirited demeanor should not be affected by these things. In the past, Asher Pei took full advantage of my love without restraint. Now I tell Orion Pei, you can too, I will give you everything I have. Orion Pei, your path has long been walked by more than just one person. Take care of you from now on. Orion Pei's shoulders and back suddenly stiffened, as if struck by electricity, and he snapped his head up. When our gazes met, I smiled at him. Only then did the unease in his eyes fade, replaced by a bright smile. Lila, you're so kind. I smiled. Orion Pei is the best person in this world. 22 Asher Pei hasn't left. Instead, standing outside the old Qin family mansion, occasionally he could see one or two guests leave early, overhearing them praise Orion Pei and Lila Qin as a match made in heaven, a perfect couple. He suddenly found himself somewhat puzzled. How had he and Lila Qin gradually reached this point of no return? Was it because of that kiss between him and Mabel Jiang at the bar back then? Was it because he clarified things for Mabel Jiang on the forum, shifting all the blame onto Lila Qin? Or perhaps it should have been Asher and Lila Chen's engagement party, but he arrogantly assumed Lila Chen wouldn't mind, so he comfortably gave away the position of his fiancée to Mabel Jiang? After all these years he hadn't felt this lost and helpless since Lila Chen almost had a heart attack back then. Asher Pei had no idea how to save a relationship that was already on the brink of collapse. Before he was reckless simply because he was sure Lila Chen loved him, but today he wasn't sure anymore, unsure if Lila Chen still loved him, unsure how much love Lila Chen had left for him. Suddenly Asher Pei's phone in his pocket vibrated. When he took out his phone and saw the message sender, his gaze darkened. Asher, I'm pregnant. And Aunt are also coming to the house. Are you coming back tonight? Asher Pei's 5 fingers holding the phone tightened at once. Then he immediately got into the car and went back to the villa. It was close to Beijing University, convenient for them to attend classes daily. Lila Chen had also lived there for a period of time, but later their courses were not many. Mr. Chen was concerned about Lila Chen's health, and every day he was picked up and dropped off at the old mansion by the driver. When Asher Pei arrived home, Pai's mother was happily explaining pregnancy knowledge to Mabel Jiang and even suggested that Mabel Jiang take a year off from school. As Mabel Jiang smiled and spoke, Asher Pai's voice turned cold. This child cannot be kept. Instantly the living room fell into a deathly silence. Mabel Jiang's smile froze on her lips. Asher, what did you say? I say this child cannot stay, Asher Pai repeated, his tone leaving no room for refusal. Pai's mother, who had always been indulgent toward Asher Pai, now had a serious expression on her face. Why can't we keep him? Asher, this is your first child. This isn't the case. My child can only be the one Lila gives me. I do not recognize any others. Asher Pai said directly, then took out the agreement he had signed with Mabel Jiang and tossed it directly onto the coffee table. This was sent over by his assistant. Originally, if Mabel Jiang had behaved, he was still willing to continue this agreement, even if Lila Chen couldn't forgive him. But now Mabel Jiang has crossed the line time and time again. He can't tolerate it anymore. Now that he and Lila Chen have this situation, he's already at his wit's end. He dare not even think about what kind of look Lila Chen would give him if she found out Mabel Jiang is pregnant. Mabel subconsciously reached for the agreement, but was taken by Pai father first. When he saw the content of the agreement clearly, his entire face darkened, including Pai mother, who looked at Asher Pai in disbelief. So you and Mabel Jiang were lying to us? Just because you want to inject funds into Jiang Corporation? Asher Pai calmly said, yes, Mabel Jiang saved me back then. This is what I owe her. Suddenly, Pai's father fiercely threw the agreement in his hand at Asher Pai. I knew it. Why do you have to invest in Jiang Corporation, Asher Pai? Is there something wrong with your head? Yes, she did save you back then, but do you need to repay it with your own marriage? Asher Pai Wang looked at his father Pai and said, do you think I'm willing? I mentioned investing in Jiang Corporation, but you thought Jiang Corporation wasn't suitable and directly rejected it. If it weren't like this, would I have come up with the idea of a marriage alliance? Pai's father's voice cracked, his right hand trembling violently as he pointed at Asher Pai. Asher Pai smirked, loosening his tie, glancing at Mabel Jiang before looking away. He sat lazily on the sofa saying, also Dad, there's one thing I really don't understand. Orion secretly took so many shares and you really had no idea at all? Or do you know and are deliberately indulging him, wanting him to compete with me? Asher Pai. Pai's father slammed the table and stood up. At this point, Pai's mother also realized what was happening. Seeing Pai's father about to act, she quickly stopped him. What are you doing? Are you going to hit Asher? Is there anything wrong with what Asher said? Old Pai suddenly clamped his hand over his chest, his knuckles digging hard into the front of his suit, until he was so furious he couldn't utter a word, and then he turned and walked off. Pai's mother immediately wanted to follow, but saw Mabel Jiang still standing to one side. Her gaze lingered on her stomach for a moment, then turned back to Asher Pai saying, Asher, regarding the agreement, your father and I can pretend we don't know about it, but in the future there's no later. Asher replied. Pearl still wanted to persuade Asher to at least leave the child behind, but just then she saw him stand up and walk Mabel Jiang out of the yard with a cold expression. Mabel Jiang struggled desperately. Asher, where are you taking me? To the hospital. Hearing this, Mabel Jiang's face turned pale. This is still your child. It's not. Asher said in a cold voice. He shoved Mabel Jiang into the passenger seat. Mabel Jiang clung desperately to the hem of Pai Mu's clothes, crying in despair. Auntie, please save me, save my child. The child is innocent. Pai Mu opened her mouth, but when Asher Pai's gaze shifted to her, she could only avert her eyes in pain. Even if she loves this child very much, in her heart, Asher Pai is the most important. The car finally drove away. 23 Hospital, 3 hours after surgery. After Mabel Jiang woke up, she was extremely quiet. Lying on the hospital bed, her gaze was filled with resentment towards Asher Pai. She never expected Asher Pai to be so ruthless this time. Even though she had provoked Lila Chen last time, Asher Pai had never called off their engagement, but this time he actually personally sent her to the operating table, witnessing that yet-to-be-formed little life flowing out of her body. She had once thought that Asher Pai had at least some affection for her. She finally realized today that Asher Pai is a heartless person. Asher Pai ignored her and instead took out a bank card and placed it on the bedside table. Here is $1 million, go abroad. I will help you transfer your academic records from Peking University. Hearing this, Mabel Jiang's pupils shrank as she looked at Asher Pai. I don't want to go abroad. You don't have to go abroad either. Jiang Corporation's investment hasn't been completed yet, and it's only a matter of time before they declare bankruptcy. If you're willing to marry that old man, then you can stay. Our agreement is voided, and the news of us canceling the engagement will be announced soon. Mabel Jiang, don't blame me. It's all because you crossed the line yourself. Asher Pei's tone was almost indifferent as he announced the end of this engagement banquet that had only existed for a week, in a strictly professional manner. Mabel Jiang stared at the ceiling, tears tracing their way down the corners of her eyes. A silence fell in the hospital room for a while, then she suddenly burst into laughter, filled with sarcasm. She was in the same year as Asher Pei, but she had known about him since high school. She got into Peking University, signed up for the same major as Asher Pei and chased after him step by step. She never thought that the bright moon would one day shine on her. It was fate that gave her the opportunity. By chance she saved Asher Pei and in return she received what was called a life-saving grace. Finally she entered the world of Asher Pei. She knew she was an illegitimate daughter, unworthy of Asher Pei, and she was also aware that Asher Pei liked Lila Chen. She never minded. Because the youth would not belong solely to her, she had long known it, but she still thought, shamefully thought. If she became Asher Pei's fiancée, his wife perhaps? Even without the bond of love, at least she could still entangle with Asher Pei for a lifetime. That's why when the Jiang family wanted to marry her off to the old man, she finally gathered the courage to propose a 3-year agreement to Asher Pei. But now she actually felt some regret. Regretted getting involved with Lila Chen, regretted provoking Lila Chen. She used to not dislike Lila Chen, only envied Asher Pei's smooth sailing, which made her possessiveness grow wildly. Finish dealing with Mabel Jiang's matter. Asher Pei didn't want to stay longer. As he turned to leave, Mabel Jiang's voice came from behind him. Asher Pei, do you think Lila Chen still loves you? Asher Pei's fingertips, which had fallen to the side, trembled slightly, then he gave a soft chuckle. She loves me. Mabel Jiang stopped sowing discord. Lila Chen loves me. He repeated. He didn't know whether he was saying it to Mabel Jiang or to himself. 24 I didn't expect to meet Mabel Jiang at the hospital. This morning the doctor called me and the source of the organ match for Orion Pei was found. I accompanied Orion Pei to complete the hospital admission surgery. Mabel Jiang walked out of the hospital room. Pale-faced and still wearing her hospital gown, she paused slightly when she saw me, then pretended nothing had happened. She straightened her back and walked past me, her steps steady. According to a passing nurse, she was forcibly brought in for an abortion yesterday. I only found out that Mabel Jiang is pregnant. The investment by the Jiang family came to nothing, and they officially declared bankruptcy liquidation last night. Jiang's father ran to the Pei family, causing a great stir. When my father told me about it this morning, I was still a bit surprised. After all, whether in this life or the last, the most important thing Asher Pei held in his heart was nothing more than Mabel Jiang's life-saving grace from back then. But now, Jiang has no longer interfered, announcing the cancellation of his engagement to Mabel Jiang, and also hit Mabel Jiang's child. What else does Asher Pei want to do? Lila. Asher Pei's voice came. I turned my head, his tightly furrowed brows only then relaxed as if released. I heard you're at the hospital and I thought you had another heart problem. So I rushed over right away. Luckily you're okay. After saying that, he gently curved his lips in my direction, as if those recent arguments had never happened. Asher Pei walked closer to me and was about to take my hand affectionately when I instinctively avoided it and took a step back. He wasn't angry either. A smile still lingered on his face. Lila, I know you're still angry. It's okay if you don't want me to get engaged to Mabel Jiang, I won't. From now on, I won't do anything that upsets you because of Mabel Jiang, okay? The tail of the sound fell and he looked at me with burning eyes. Now I finally understand what Asher Pei wants to do. He wants to make up with me. But it seems he doesn't understand that once a crack appears, even if the surface is patched up perfectly, the inner lines will continue to extend. Moreover, I have died once now. Not good, I said. Asher's expression faltered, but he still maintained a smile. I know that saying this won't convince you now, but Lila, see what I do, okay? As long as you give me one more chance, I will definitely do well. We'll be better than Orion Pei, he said with certainty. But I smiled. No one in this world can do better than Orion Pei. Asher Pei, you think too highly of yourself. Hearing this, the warmth in Asher Pei's eyes cooled down inch by inch. I didn't want to get entangled with him anymore, and just as I was about to leave, he immediately grabbed my wrist and said eagerly and urgently, Lila, I admit I was too arrogant before. I was wrong, but you can't just sentence me to death like this. Even capital punishment has a reprieve. You can't treat me this way. I chuckled softly, looking at the young man before me whom I had once fallen for at first sight. If he had thought the same way in a past life, how wonderful that would have been. If in a past life, when he pushed me onto the bungee jumping platform, he could have had a sudden realization and then told me, Lila, I was wrong. Perhaps we would still have had a beautiful future. Then I loved Asher Pei too much, no matter what he did, I still loved him. But it's different now. Asher Pei, do you know why I can stand here safely today? Suddenly I asked Pei. He froze, a hint of confusion in his eyes. I knew he didn't understand, but I still spoke, my voice soft. I have this life, it was earned through Pei's 3 kneelings and 9 kowtows. My fate was given by Pei. If I forgive you today, if I give you a chance, how unfair would that be to Pei? Pei was at a loss for words, saying, Lila, what are you talking about? 25. I didn't say anything more and forcefully pulled my hand out. When turning around to head back to the room, Pei was already standing not far down the hallway, and at this point he had changed into a blue and white striped hospital gown. The wide collar hung loosely over his collarbones, making his neck appear even more slender. A bright smile was on his face. He said casually and defiantly, Classmate Chin Lila, you've been out for 15 minutes. I thought you were lost. I gave a helpless smile. Walk over and took his hand. Orion raised his eyebrows playfully and said to Pei behind me with a mischievous look, Bro, stop constantly bothering my fiancé. If I see you again, I won't leave you a single cent from the Pei family. Pei clenched his fists tightly and suddenly charged forward like a madman, just about to hit Pei when I instinctively stepped in front of Pei. Pei reacted faster, kicking Pei hard in the chest. He stumbled back several steps, a wave of anger burning in his chest. When he looked up, his eyes were filled with disbelief. Lila, are you just going to protect him like this? Do you know what he has done? Do you think he truly likes you? He is after the Chin family, wanting to use your family's influence to pull me down from the position of heir to the Pei family. By the end he was almost shouting. For a moment the noisy corridor fell into silence, and the people passing by couldn't help but turn their gaze to us. For a long while I retorted, so what? What Pei wants I can give him. Chin Lila. Pei stared at me intently. Why? Pei clenched my hand, smiled and answered for me, because Lila loves me. This time he has more confidence than ever. No longer shrinking, no longer timid. Because he finally experienced that I have no reason to favor him. Every word I say to him is practiced. Still refuses to believe that I no longer love him. He searched through all my friends hoping they would mediate, but in the end he realized that only Shin-in and I were close, and Shin-in actually disliked him even more. When Pei said he wanted to pursue me again, Shin-in cursed at him for 3 or 4 hours straight. In the past Pei would have turned around and left long ago. But that day he reluctantly agreed with a bitter smile. He told Shin-in, I know I've done a lot of wrong things, but I love Lila, and I can't accept that she doesn't love me. He even sent countless messages to Pei. From threats and intimidation to later putting himself in a subordinate position. I can give you the position of the Pei family heir, but can you give Lila back to me? He was at his wit's end and had no other recourse. What I found amusing was that the mother who had once wished to break up with me and Pei had now taken the initiative to reach out to me. On that day Pei was preparing for a transplant surgery. He was in a state of unconsciousness. The doctor had just finished telling me about the post-surgery precautions, and Mother Pei suddenly appeared behind me. I don't know how much she heard, but her first words were still about Pei. Lila Chin, Asher is sick. He has a high fever and isn't eating or drinking. Can you go see him? Even Mother Pei, who always looked radiant, had become weary during these days. As a mother, she is doing her utmost to do what she can for her son. But at that moment my heart felt as if it were suffocating. The same child, born after 10 months of pregnancy by Mother Pei. Her inner scale, however, will forever tip in favor of Pei, while completely overlooking Pei, who had just returned from the brink of death. The only thing I'm seeing is, Pei hasn't woken up yet. I rejected Pei's mother. Everything about Pei is no longer related to me. It is fate, whether life or death. But Pei, the Pei family doesn't want him, I do. 26 a month later, Pei was formally discharged from the hospital. Coincidentally, it was the second-year college final exams, and Pei unexpectedly failed the subjects. But in reality I knew that art wasn't suitable for Pei. His talent lay in finance, though I hadn't noticed it before. Pei chose the fine arts department because of me. At the gathering Shin-in directly teased, Master Pei, you're not doing well either. Don't end up with our Lila smoothly graduating while you're still struggling with makeup exams. Pei frowned slightly, and just as I thought he was upset about failing the exam, he stared at Shin-in seriously and said, Shin, let me correct you, Lila is mine, not yours. Also, wherever Lila is, I'll be there. Suddenly I couldn't hold back and burst out laughing. Shin-in widened his eyes in disbelief. No, Lila, what nonsense is he talking about? How many years of feelings between us? I patted Shin-yin's shoulder, leaned close to her ear and whispered soothingly, You're the best in the world to me, don't be angry. At this point Shin also smiled. That's definitely the case. Orion Pei glanced at her but didn't contradict her. When the get-together ended I went to the bathroom but unexpectedly ran into Asher Pei. He had been deliberately waiting for me at the door. During this time, although Orion Pei was recuperating in the hospital, he had hardly stopped working. Now the Pei group had become a one-man show run by Orion Pei, and by the time Pei's father realized, it was already too late. Orion took the top position, becoming the sole ruler of the Pei family. Want to talk? I asked. Asher Pei with his haggard face smiled faintly. I thought you wouldn't talk to me anymore. If I don't talk to you, will you let me go? I raised my chin, my gaze falling on the path he blocked. Asher Pei no longer argued with me about this matter. Nearly 3 minutes had passed. He finally asked, Lila, why are you so unwilling to get back together with me? Is it because I kissed Mabel Jiang or because I made you a mistress? I blinked, not understanding for a moment. Asher Pei said again, regarding kissing Mabel Jiang, I can't go back to the past, I can't change, but... His voice suddenly hesitated, his Adam's apple rolling. Lila, I can be your lover, I don't want any status, I just want a little bit of your love. Even 1/10,000th of the past is fine, but don't leave me. Can it be? He lowered his head to look at me, his voice hoarse, full of pleading. I was taken aback by Asher Pei's words. In the end, I simply replied in a flat tone, Asher Pei, I'm not you, I need to give my loved one enough security. I'll pretend I didn't hear anything you said today. Asher Pei, that's enough. After speaking, I didn't wait for Asher Pei's reply and left directly after bumping into his shoulder. Asher Pei stood there stunned. No one knows better than him how I love someone, and he can't blame anyone for where things stand today. Later, I didn't hear any more news from Asher Pei. He was as if he had disappeared out of thin air. Shanine said that the day I went to the bathroom, Orion Pei followed right out shortly after. I thought it was an accident until the Pei mother ran over to scold Orion Pei, and then I learned that Asher Pei had been forcibly sent abroad by Orion Pei. I heard everything Asher Pei said. I didn't tell him I had met Asher Pei and he didn't ask either. But he always remembered that incident. When I heard Orion Pei say, sending him abroad is already being kind of me, Lila. I want to kill him. At that moment I finally understood. Orion Pei's sense of security could be shaken by a single word or action of mine. So on Orion Pei's 22nd birthday, I took him to the Civil Affairs Bureau that very day to get the certificate. I thought, some sense of security can also be achieved with external help. Orion Pei, on the day he received the marriage certificate, smiled like a child who had just gotten candy, continuously rubbing the gilded text on the certificate with his fingertips. His eyes were filled with tiny fragments of starlight. The smile at the corners of his mouth couldn't be hidden, finally transforming into a radiantly brilliant smile. That day he asked me, Lila, do you know why I changed my name to Orion Pei? I smiled and said I probably guessed it. The night rain ends, Orion breaks through the clouds to see the moon. Orion Pei said his rebirth was given to him by me, but how could I not be?